Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to Nerd Week Live, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, bring to you some nerd news items that have happened over the past week since our last show last Thursday. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor in chief of Nerd Caliber, first person shooter on Facebook and Instagram as a cosplay photographer, burly adopter on Mastodon and a couple of other social media places. And the less said about that blue checkmark place, the better. If you have any opinion on any of the shows or piece of information about comic books or anime or whatever that we're talking about, feel free to put them in the chat here on YouTube. We love to respond to them live. Love to get that feedback. So if you have an opinion on any of the topics, if you have an opinion on my opinion of the topics, then feel free to pump in there. Fish, don't know when you put that in there, but welcome to the show. You say E, I will say not the next letter because that might seem like I'm saying something, implying something wrong. So I will jump over it to say G. So anyway, you'd have to see the chat to get that. Doesn't matter. So we only have a few topics. It's going to be a pretty quick show tonight, even though I'm going to go off on a few tangents. And we're going to start with the very first one. And it is about Macross coming back to the anime world in a really potentially very interesting way. So first off, what this image is technically from a Macross film. Literally just wrapped up its run. These folks are Macross idols from Macross Delta. Let's see if I can get this right. Macross Delta Valkyrie Final Live Tour 2023. So it was an animated idol concert film series that took some of what I'm assuming, I haven't seen the Delta series, but what I'm assuming some idol characters from the Macross Delta anime, and at the very end of Sunday's show, or Sunday's screening, it was announced by the studios behind this that there would be a new Macross animation project, their term, coming up. So what is Macross? Macross is a space battle mecha series that goes all the way back to 1982, 40 plus years ago. That includes the mechas transform into jets or space planes. The stories include usually romance, like a love triangle, and music, idol performances. Characters within the stories are almost always idols. Some of them are. So it's a little different than some of the other, typical, very old school mecha anime long-running series like Gundam. But the big news out of this is that the studio Sunrise, which is a studio from or behind all of the Prime Gundam Universe works, so the Universal Century, if you're a Gundam fan, works, Sunrise is going to be making this new animation project. Project means they are not saying whether it's a film or a new series. And we'll have to wait to find out what that is. But honestly, if you're going to start a new Macross anything, putting it in the hands of Sunrise is a smart call. If you are a fan of the Universal or any of the Gundam stuff, but particularly the Universal Century stuff, and if you've not seen the Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway movie from a couple of years ago, we did a full fat spoiler chat review of it, and it's really good. Outstanding character design, animation, smartly written, as all the Gundam stuff for the most part. Some stinkers in there, but almost all of the Gundam stories, particularly the ones that are really serious and focus on sort of the space politics and the socio-political environment, whether it's Universal Century or not. Like Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans is not, but it's really smart. And the currently airing Mobile Suit Gundam Witch from Mercury is also not in the Universal Century, but it's also really smart. Um, so I'm really hopeful that this will be a series. It'll be great if it's a film, but it'd be really great if it was a series that sort of brings Studio Sunrise's capabilities to Macross, to modern Macross stories. Um, Now, this actually sort of bleeds into a connected, because it was announced at the same day, although not at the same event, story. Back in the 80s, Harmony Gold, a USA unit of a global distributor, acquired the rights to distribute Macross globally, re-edited a lot of it, redubbed it all in English, and released it as a Western cartoon that some of you are probably familiar with called Robotech. Essentially the same story, just reconfigured, and of course with different voice actors. Um, Apparently, the reason why we're now getting a new Macross animated project is a couple of years ago, after decades of, I'm guessing, back and forth struggle, Studio Nue, which was the original studio behind Macross, and I assume therefore the holder of the Japanese intellectual property rights, finally came to an agreement with Harmony Gold on global distribution of new Macross content. So that is undoubtedly why we're getting this new Macross project, whatever it's going to be. Um, and but that also leads into our sort of next story, which is about Robotech, and particularly a Robotech comic book. So it was just announced that Titan Comics will be doing a new Robotech comic book series called Robotech Rick Hunter 1 that launches on August 2nd. It is written by currently a writer on one of the other Titan titles, Kamen Rider 01, and also on an IDW title, writing Transformers for IDW. Brandon Easton and artist Simone Ragazzoni. It looks really good. It has a very sort of 3D painterly look to the, at least the covers anyway, that they've shown, and I think that's great. Titan is one of those interesting comic book publishers that has, it does a little bit of original content, but it's almost always IP that it licenses from somewhere else or picks up because it's in the public domain. It has done a bunch of Sherlock stuff once Sherlock hit the public domain a few years ago, Sherlock Holmes. But it also, its primary apparently moneymakers right now are, it has the Blade Runner franchise, it has the Horizon Zero Dawn franchise, it has a couple of good, Bloodborne, a couple of different gaming franchises, and it is one of the holders of the Doctor Who franchise license. Its major competitor for this kind of stuff, IDW, which is the publisher of the Transformers stuff, apparently also holds a Doctor Who license. They do Doctor Who comics as well as Titan doing Doctor Who comics. So that's good news for comic book fans, for Robotech fans, and it's really interesting that it came about essentially on the same day that the Macross information got put out about the new Macross animation project. I'm more looking forward to the Macross animation project. Again, hopefully it'll be a series. I haven't read an awful lot of the licensed anything from Titan or IDW for that matter, even though I'm a huge fan and a friend of J.K. Woodward, who does an awful lot of the artwork for the Star Trek licensed stuff for IDW and the Doctor Who stuff and the crossovers. They do some really interesting crossovers. But anyway, so August 2nd, you get to buy your first issue of Robotech Rick Hunter #1 if you want. No word on when whatever the animation project about Macross will land, because again, we don't even know if it's a film or a series. Either way, they just announced it, so you're looking at, I would say, at least 2 years before we get to see anything coming out of it. Maybe longer. Fingers crossed it's 2 years, because this deal with Harmony Gold about global distribution happened in 2021, April of 2021. So it's been more than 2 years. So maybe there's an awful lot of the actual pre-production work already been done, like scripts have maybe have been written and they just aren't announcing that yet. Or it could just be the beginning. It could be years before we get to see whatever it is that they're making. But it's Sunrise. I'm all in. It could still be written terribly. It could be just awful. But Macross, as a rule, is pretty good stuff. I don't think it holds up to Gundam quite, but it's very interesting. All right, keeping in the comic book world, since we just talked about the Robotech comic book, this is part of the cover of the upcoming Captain America #1, and the news straight out of Marvel here is that J. Michael Straczinsky is coming back to Marvel Comics to write this new Captain America storyline. That again will start with a new numbering at Captain America #1. It's going to be written by Straczinsky. Art, as in this cover right here, by Jesus Saiz, probably mispronouncing Saiz, his last name. And this is a description coming out of Marvel. So, decades ago, Steve Rogers changed the world forever. Now, powerful and insidious forces are assembling to ensure that he never does it again. Past, present, and future collide as the man out of time reckons with an existential threat determined to set the world on a darker path at any cost. What you don't see, because this is actually from a cover, so what you don't see is the lower 2/3 of the cover, where this scene, you can see the buildings in the background. Captain America fades as the cover goes down, and we find out that those buildings are part of a street in Brooklyn where the young Steve Rogers, the young, skinny, short Steve Rogers, is facing down, because you can see the shadows of some thugs, goons, or whatever, ready to throw down, already has a bloody nose, but clearly it's Steve Rogers, and, as he says, he can do this all day. It looks like it might jump back and forth in time. It might be a time travel story. I don't know exactly where they're going to go with this. It's Straczinsky. So, I'm in this very, very strongly. Straczinsky is a fantastic writer, the creator and primary writer of Babylon 5, but an awful lot of other stuff. I mean, he wrote a lot of excellent comic book work for both Marvel and DC. He did a lot of Thor work when he was at Marvel. He did 5 years on Amazing Spider-Man. Unfortunately, one of those included One More Day. So the infamous, as the wiki entry puts it, One More Day. Probably one of the most hated Spider-Man storylines ever made. But he has written lots and lots of really excellent stuff, going all the way back to like the Transformers cartoons. He has been working in cartoons, comics, television, live action movies. He wrote Changeling, the Angelina Jolie movie. He's written an awful lot of stuff. He's really, really good, talented writer. We talked about him a few weeks ago when he announced that there's apparently a Babylon 5 animated movie that brings back all of the living original cast members as voice cast members. That's done and in the can, and I don't know why he hasn't announced a release date, but anyway, so Straczinsky coming back and doing this is good news. I'm looking forward to this. I haven't picked up much of anything on Comixology or even actual live issues, except for Free Comic Book Day, in a long time. I'm probably going to start buying this and see how he's doing, what his storyline is with this. To be honest, the last time I did that was when Rick Remender jumped onto Captain America, and I hated that storyline. I really like Rick Remender as a writer. I hated that story. I thought it was terrible. But I'm hoping Straczinsky will not do that for me. All right, moving on to our next topic. This is a screen grab from the upcoming CGI animated Resident Evil film, Resident Evil Death Island. And we've got Chris Redfield here and Jill Valentine. I like the new designs, particularly Jill Valentine's design, outfit design, doing something a lot more like Starbuck from the Battlestar Galactica reboot. With the dual A shirts, it's a tougher look, while still having her, sort of trademark blue top. Looks good. I like it. The movie, the Resident Evil Death Island, will be streaming. I don't know if it's streaming. All right, let me back up on that. It will be available on demand to purchase on Blu-ray, on DVD, and digital. So I'm assuming that's digital on demand and not on a streaming platform on July 25th. It is in the Prime storyline. So all of the games, the Netflix series Resident Evil Infinite Darkness, which is a shame, that was not good, but the films, the CGI films, Resident Evil Degeneration, Damnation, and Vendetta, and this looks to be sort of a follow-up to those CGI films, but they're all part of the actual game storyline. This doesn't have anything to do with the Resident Evil live action stuff, or the Netflix live action Resident Evil series. Those are all sort of separate universes. This brings most of your favorite characters from the first couple of games together in one movie. So the way it's described here in this Collider article, Jill Valentine, voiced by Nicole Tompkins, has been working alongside Chris Redfield, Kevin Dorman, to stop a new strain or new strains of the T-virus from being unleashed upon the world. They are joined by Rebecca Chambers, who is voiced by Erin Cahill, the lead of the prequel Resident Evil Zero, Claire Redfield, again voiced by Stephanie Penicello, and Leon S. Kennedy, who's working with Claire, voiced by Matthew Mercer. Critical roles, Matthew Mercer. The Resident Evil Infinite Darkness limited series on Netflix was awful, and this is being directed by the same director, Ichiro Hasumi. Now, Hasumi has directed some interesting things outside of this, mostly live-action adaptations of anime stuff. Both of the live-action adaptation movies from Assassination's Classroom. Very early on in his career, he made a movie called Up High Volleyball, live-action movie. Haven't seen any screenshots of it, but I can certainly picture it. But he did do Infinite Darkness, so I'm not really that thrilled. However, the writer of this upcoming Death Island, by the way, refers to Alcatraz. It turns out where all of the new T-virus strains is coming from is Alcatraz, which I think is really cool. I like that idea. But it is being written by Makoto Fukami, a mangaka, or manga writer anyway, an anime script writer, movie writer. Fukami-san's credits as lead writer include Psycho-Pass, sadly, the 2016 Berserk. However, the writing was not the problem with Berserk. It was the terrible animation. Where else is it? Oh, and one of the best animes running currently this season, and one of my absolute favorites in quite a while, Heavenly Delusion. And by the way, I just realized that I can put animated GIFs into OBS Studio. So I've been using this for 3 years. What kind of an idiot am I? This is just a quick GIF from Heavenly Delusion. if you are not watching it and you're an anime fan of any kind whatsoever, this is one of the best, smartest, most interesting post-apocalyptic science fiction, horror, action, drama, adventure anime I've seen in a long time. Fukami-san also wrote the oh, I didn't rename it. That's why. Also wrote the manga and then the anime adaptation for Magical Girl Spec Ops Asuka. And you can see by the blood there, this is a seinen magical girl military science fiction or science fantasy, I guess. Super dark, edgy seinen anime series. It's not terribly great. It is one of my guilty pleasures from the last 5 years or so. It's, you know, it is incredibly violent, incredibly dark at times, tons of ecchi, almost a throwback to those early 2000s anime where we're just, you know, like military sci-fi anime that was just brutal and horrible. And then loaded with, like, you know, panty shots and stuff. Like, this is kind of like that. But if the writer of Heavenly Delusion, the lead writer of the anime Heavenly Delusion, is writing this movie, maybe it wasn't the director's fault that the Infinite Darkness limited series was so bad. Fingers crossed. I mean, you got a great voice cast. Even then, back then, if you watch our full fat spoiler chat, Gogo Incognito and I watched the series, and you know, we both, the good voice actors couldn't save it. But I'm really hoping that we do actually get a quality piece of work out of this because of the people that are involved. Did I think I already said this? Yeah, July 25th. So July 25th is when you can, if you want to buy it or rent it on whatever digital platform it's going to be available to rent on. You know, we don't advocate piracy here, so don't go to any of those websites to watch it. You heard me say that out loud. But I will be watching it when it comes to something that I can see it on. Because I like the idea. I like the cast. I really, really like that writer. Go watch Heavenly Delusion. Seriously. If this season wasn't also filled with Hell's Paradise, what I've already mentioned, the second season of The Witch from Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, and Oshinoko, Heavenly Delusion would be like Burj Al Khalifa tower taller than anything else being put out this season. It happens to have those three other absolutely insanely good anime competing with it this season, so it's just the best of a crop of really outstanding stuff. But yeah, watch it. Go watch it. It's wonderful. All right, moving on to our next topic. This is cover art from the one of the covers, but probably the most popular cover from the book Best Served Cold, which is, I think, the second in Joe Abercrombie's The First Law series of books. And the news is that Tim Miller, the director of the first Deadpool movie, is going to be making a movie based on this best-selling book. And Deadline is reporting as an exclusive, so therefore it's not confirmed, etc., etc., that in talks to play the lead is going to be Rebecca Ferguson, most recently seen in Dune. I think this would be wonderful. I honestly have not read the book. And I didn't put it into, this could have been in last week's show. I didn't put it into the show because the headline in the article from Deadline says Rebecca Ferguson in talks for Skydance revenge pick, best served cold. And yeah, I mean, technically it's a revenge pick. It's a, you know, definitely a fantasy series, a fantasy novel, swords and, you know, magic and et cetera, et cetera. But sure, it's a revenge pick being made by Skydance. Since I didn't know the series that well, I had no idea that this was something that people would be interested in. I thought it was just a, you know, a modern revenge pick. Until I saw something else about it in, of all people, I think it was Daniel Green's Fantasy News on YouTube, and went, oh, there. So I put it in here, and Greg, Wonder Llama Photography, one of our regular contributors here, he's read it, and he loves the series. It's absolutely fantastic. So I may have to pick it up. I'll have to check it out. I'm really looking forward to the movie. Tim Miller is a really interesting get to do this. So the character that's in this photo from the cover here is Monza Mercado, a legendary mercenary, as a betrayal that ostracizes her, and it's about her ensuing quest for revenge that will forever change a nation. I think Rebecca Ferguson would be great. Give her that sword, and I'm watching it. I don't care whatever else. Sure, having Tim Miller direct it is cool. You know, sure. What else has Tim Miller done? Oh yeah, creating Love, Death, and Robots. Absolutely. Executive producer on the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Sure. Bring Tim Miller on, and I'm also committed. But Rebecca Ferguson with that sword, I'm done. By the way, anybody out there who's a photographer or plays with photography and Photoshop, the other day I downloaded, or I think yesterday, I downloaded Photoshop Beta for the generative AI feature. This is a grab from the cover. Again, I said probably the most popular cover of the book. But from about the top of the curved knuckle guard through her forehead and about halfway into her hair was a text line that said, Sunday Times bestselling author, obviously describing Joe Abercrombie. So I loaded this up. Once I cropped it and it still had that text there, I loaded this up into Photoshop Beta and just took a selection tool for a rectangle around that text and typed into remove white text and clicked generative AI. And that's what it gave me. It's like perfect. I don't know if it's exactly what the artwork underneath was before they put the text over it, but it's close enough that, you know, I couldn't tell. And by the way, publisher Hachette, please don't sue me for doing that. Nobody tell Hachette about this. They don't need to know. It's not like I'm going to do anything with it other than put it up here on a YouTube. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Just announced, so again, no, well, they didn't even really announce it. So the news, again, is that it's an exclusive, so therefore not confirmed, that Rebecca Ferguson is in final talks to play the main killer, the main killer. She is obviously a killer. The main character, Monza Mercado. So we don't have any idea of when this will happen. Again, years from now. But I'm looking forward to it if and when it does. All right. Our final topic. This is a screenshot from the trailer. Apparently, when I talked about this 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, that was just a teaser. This is the actual trailer for the upcoming season 6 of Black Mirror. This article in Deadline lists all of the 6 stories and or episodes and what they're all about. Everything like where it was filmed and so on. Um, this is coming right up in, I believe, July. I made a commitment that I was going to look at all of these in advance and say for sure when it was going to be, and yeah, I'm pretty sure it's late July. Um, but anyway, this particular image of Salma Hayek comes from the very first episode called "Joan is Awful." Um, and it's a story about a relatively powerful woman in her industry, and it gives a feel that it might be Hollywood, um, who suddenly discovers that there's a, as they call here, a prestige TV drama adaptation of her life as it's happening, where she's played by Salma Hayek, and it's stuff that she would never admit in public to saying or doing. Hence, Joan is Awful. Um, Looks really interesting. All of the things look really interesting. There's Loch Henry, kids in a small Scottish town. Beyond the Sea, set in an alternate 1969, with Aaron Paul. There's Maisie Day. Troubled starlet is dogged by invasive paparazzi while dealing with the consequences of a hit and run incident. Has Zazie Beetz in it. And Demon 79, set in northern New England in 1979. A meek sales assistant is told she must commit terrible acts to prevent disaster. The fact that it's set in 1979 makes me think what the disaster is. So we'll have to see. But I don't know for sure. They don't go into it here, and I don't want to speculate too much. If you're old enough and you know Northern England in 1979, then you know probably what they're talking about with this disaster. But yeah, so that's it for the show, folks. Thank you once again for tuning in, everybody. I told you it'd be a short one. We're only a little over 30 minutes here. Updates for some of the cons that we're going to. We heard back from a bunch of applications recently, all like in a row. And so we will be at, in 2 weeks, we'll be at Contropolis, Massachusetts, the new thing from Altered Reality. The people who put on other cons like Rhode Island Comic Con. That will be in Marlborough. We will also be at, where are we here? In the third weekend in July, we'll be at Connecticut. We will also be at the next weekend, the last weekend in July. We will be at Rhode Island Anime Con, the new anime focused convention, also being put on by the folks at Altered Reality. This at in Providence at the Rhode Island Convention Center again, where they put on Rhode Island Comic Con. And I think that's it up until we get to like Fan Expo Boston and Pop Cult Anime Con in August and so on. I still might go to PortCon third weekend in June. That's still up in the air. That's a transportation thing, so we'll have to see about that. But we definitely have some cons that we're finally heard back from and we're definitely committed to. So we'll see you at those upcoming cons, or we'll see you at next week's show or another show. In the meantime, please stay safe out there, folks. Continue to wear your masks when you're out in a large venue. Nobody wants to get COVID and or anything else that might be coming down the road. And enjoy the weather, which I finally am, unless you're breathing the dangerous air coming out of the maritime provinces in Canada still. And, again, that's minor problem for me, much bigger problem from people up there with the forest fires. Please, let's hope those things get under control. But U.S. Weather Service has issued a bad air warning for me here in Marblehead throughout the next day. And then I just got an announcement that we're getting a flood warning I'm assuming because of rains that are supposed to happen um, overnight and through the entire next day. So, yeah, I'll try to stay safe from the flooding and the bad air. And you folks out there try to stay safe from whatever it is you need to stay safe from. Good night, and bye bye.